Hey, Aaron Adams with Alpine Capital Solutions. I wanted to take a few minutes today and cover some of the most frequently asked questions that we get with respect to Alpine property management and the way that we manage properties. This is a series that we're putting together, a frequently asked question video series, where I want to cover some of the most common questions that we get across the board over and over again. So hopefully you've either found this section on our website or one of our reps has sent this to you as a link. Today I want to take just 10 minutes and talk about property management. One of the most common questions I get is about tenant screening. How do you screen tenants and what's your criteria? This is something that's really evolved for us a lot over the years. It started with me just having a conversation with tenants and then trying to make a decision about whether that was going to work for us. And it certainly has evolved into much more than that now. Anybody who applies, we pull their credit, we look at their criminal background, we look to see what their job history is, what their tenant history is as a tenant or as a homeowner. We really scrutinize their credit report. We look for things like delinquent utility bills. Maybe somebody that doesn't have an eviction on their credit, but if they're not paying their gas, electric, and water bills and they have 30, 60, 90 days late, then that's a red flag for us. What we've done over the last 12 or so years is when we do have an eviction, we go back and say, was there something in the screening process that we could have missed? So when you think about the thousands of tenants that we've screened over the years, we've really refined our ability to identify potential problem scenarios. We require that our tenants prove 3 times the monthly rent. So if you want to rent a house from us for $1,000, you have to prove $3,000 a month in income. Now this can come from a variety of sources. You could get disability, you could get child support. Obviously you can have a job. What we don't do is just let you pay us $12,000 in cash. Those have been the times where maybe a criminal element gets introduced, or some family member is paying someone's rent and then it becomes a problem after the 1-year lease. So we want to see income from a verifiable source. We want to see somebody who has been good about taking care of their monthly liabilities, like their light bill and their electric bill. And we're looking for someone who's been stable at their employment. And so as we've combined all of those screening processes together, we've become very efficient and very effective at screening tenants. Our default rate is a low single-digit annual rate. So for example, in Indianapolis, where we have about 1,600 properties that we manage, when we get over 10 evictions in any given month, that's a red flag. That's when we start to get concerned. People say to me, what's your vacancy rate? What's the turnover look like? And what I found as we've managed properties in Charlotte and Dallas and Orlando and Indianapolis and Kansas City is that there's a direct correlation to the type of property and the neighborhood. So we sell properties that are between blue collar up through middle class neighborhoods. If you have a 2-bedroom home in a blue collar neighborhood, your turnover is going to be more frequent. Typically your tenants are going to go 12, 14, maybe 18 months, and then that property is going to turn over. On the other end of the spectrum, we see a lot lower turnover as you get up into the middle class neighborhoods. And so our turnover tends to be less with more bedrooms and a nicer neighborhood. Now that's kind of instinctive, but I think a lot of times people don't think about that when they're choosing properties. The trade-off though comes down when you're looking at appreciation and growth. We really try to identify blue-collar neighborhoods that have a huge growth potential because of big projects that are happening with the city or big infrastructure things taking place. And so even though your turnover may be higher on a blue-collar property, you're also probably going to be seeing higher appreciation. So you as an investor really have to say, what do I want this cash flow for? What place does it have in my overall investing portfolio? Maybe the cash flow is not as more important as just overall growth. And that's a conversation that our team is happy to have with you when it comes to turnover. Along those same lines, vacancy is married to that. And our vacancy rate is usually a direct function of the type of neighborhood the property is in. We have a very, very low vacancy on homes that have 4 bedrooms or more. We also see a much lower vacancy on homes that have 3 bedrooms and a garage or more. We see a higher vacancy as we get down into multifamily. One of the kinds of properties I really don't like to manage or own as an investor are duplexes in the Midwest. I love multifamily in higher density areas like the Eastern Seaboard, New York, New Jersey. I don't like multifamily like duplexes in the Midwest. They just tend to not be as desirable for people. A question that we get all the time is, you keep 10% of my rent, what do you use that for? A lot of people mistakenly think that the 10% that we keep pays for repairs on their house. That's not the case. You, the investor, will always pay for the work on your house. If your tenant stops paying rent, you'll have to pay for the eviction. That doesn't come out of the 10%. What comes out of the 10% is management. That's what we're charging, is a management fee. That means that we will take calls from your tenants, we will take rent from your tenants, we will log those calls in our system, we will log the rent in the system, we will log the expenses in the system, so at the end of the year you have all of your income and your expenses in one easy to export location. You'll also have at any given time a detailed record of every contact that we've received from your tenant. When the tenants leave, we manage the construction work, we manage getting a budget put together for you, we manage the crews to make sure that every penny that you spend on the property gets spent on the property. We manage the releasing process. You, the investor, will pay for the leasing fee when a tenant moves out. That can be anywhere from 1/2 to 1 month's rent. And so the 10% that we keep from the monthly rent manages all aspects of the relationship between contractors, tenants, and an empty house. That's what we manage. But you, the investor, you pay for the work on the house, lawyers that do work on the house, accountants that do work on the house. Those are the responsibilities that you have. Hopefully those have touched on some of the most common questions that we have. And I wanted to just use it kind of as an introduction. For many of you, that's enough information. For others, you'll have more specific information. But I wanted you to be able to hear from me directly, the owner and founder of the company, kind of my mindset about those issues, and how, as a landlord who owns many, many properties, how I have my own properties managed. Hopefully this series as a whole is helpful to you. Obviously, I'm not in Indianapolis, but it's for me, sometimes it isn't until I get on vacation. In this case, I'm in Hawaii, and as you can tell, it's pretty warm. I might have to move indoors for the next segment, but hopefully this series is valuable to you as we touch on many other topics. So thanks for spending a few minutes to join me today.